One big idea, just a thought. If 1% of the world's richest can donate 1% of their wealth, it could wipe out the debts of most countries. It could wipe out, could eradicate poverty. Anyway, the wealth, they have boundless wealth. And they can be sure that not just themselves, but even up to 10 generations, they will still be well. They still have money. So maybe just 1% of the world's wealthy donate 1%. It could eradicate poverty. It is to their advantage because for their survival also. If we have many poor, we have the poorest of the poor have nothing to lose. So they go for terrorism, they go for kidnappings, for criminality. And the rich, they cannot be sure that they can live their lifestyle in peace. A lot of them spend for security. But if we eradicate poverty, everybody else will. You don't need to build walls. You can enjoy your wealth and share with humanity. Thank you.
I'm not going to ask Prince Fattaah whether he likes that idea. But Prince Fattaah, what is your one big idea?
I support the idea in principle. I have no problem with the idea. For me, I admire the work of, because I'm in the financial industry, so I admire the work of a lot of the bankers and financiers who work in the third world countries. For example, Professor Mohammed Yunus, who has worked in Bangladesh, is a Nobel Prize winner who improved the financial inclusion in his country by lending to the poorest of the poor and especially women. Well, the focus on women. I'm not saying the women are poorest of the poor. But then these days I'm actually more concerned about the tendency for countries to look within themselves. So this is not going to solve problems that we have globally, because there are a lot of global problems. For example, terrorism, poverty, and other problems such as global warming, climate change, and sea level rise. So I think it's good to be nationalistic, but then we have to have a good, sane and intelligent patriotism, because we can love our country. I mean, I love my country, and I think everyone here does as well. So it's an area that we have to look at, and it's going to be a challenge in the future.
Thank you very much. Stephanie.
The one thing I really am thinking about right now, new business models. If you take new technology and apply it in old business models, you're just going to get more of the same. So I want to develop new business models for how we can build a better future with AI. And those don't have to come from the technology sector. For example, let's think about jobs, right? And when you hear of a job, you think of a full-time job, 8 to 5. That might not necessarily be the reality moving forward. You have online platforms now where you can do piece jobs, like Fiverr. People will pay you $5. You just get online, do the job, get out. Education might not need to be a student sitting in a classroom all day. One thing I'm exploring with the Department of Science and Technology is using online courses to train people in the tech sector whose skills are outdated, to give them specific training so that they can do new types of jobs. That's what I mean when I say we need more ideas like that, new ways of delivering value to the world, and that will create more jobs, that will create better, more sustainable technologies.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the close of our discussion, and we have a number of ideas that I have no doubt will be developed in the course of the next 2 days. including perhaps Lilia's idea of persuading the wealthiest in the world to part with some of their wealth. This discussion has reminded me of my favorite historian, John Roberts, who at the end of his monumental work on the study of the history of the world said, the study of history basically teaches us only two lessons. The first is that things will change much more quickly than what one would expect. And the second is that things will change much more slowly, and some things will not change at all. In the course of this conference, we will be discussing, as we did today on this panel, the things that are changing much more quickly than what we expect. Artificial intelligence, the application of technology to education and health and security and all fields of life. These will change much more quickly than what we would expect. But we are also reminded, as our panelists reminded us, that not everything will change. The human need for dignity, the human need for community, the human need for compassion, the human need for integrity, these things will not change. And as we have our conversation over the next few days, we have to relate the one conversation with the other conversation. And if we are successful in doing that, we will be successful in reimagining the future. Please join me in a warm round of applause for our great panelists.
An amazing first session indeed. Thank you very much to our moderator, Dato Timothy Ong, as well as to our panelists, Prince Dr. Fattaah, Attorney Lilia de Lima, Mr. Anshu Gupta, Ms. Stephanie C, and Ms. Amanda Witdarmono. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give them another round of applause.
Good morning, Anshu. How are you doing today?
Wonderful, good.
So let's begin by hearing a little bit about your background and how you ended up in the space that you're in now. What were the key milestones that led you to where you are today?
So I think I studied journalism otherwise, but I end up now running a big social enterprise in India called Goonj. And the whole idea is that how do you really start treating the second-hand goods as a currency instead of just a charitable subject-object, because all across the globe otherwise, whenever you look at old cloth, utensil, footwear, furniture, everything, you only think of a charitable giving to someone. But what we are trying to do is that we are saying that no, the so-called the so-called poor person, where you decide on the basis of clothing. So because if someone is wearing bad or dirty clothes, you think the person is poor and unskilled and whatever, So why can't that person become a stakeholder in the entire development chain? And then once people take up their own initiative, so they dig well, they make bamboo bridges, they make roads, hardcore water, sanitation, infrastructure work in the villages, and then people are paid, people are rewarded in kind. So it becomes a huge community participation movement, and B, there are parallel currencies in the world which can solve the problems. You're not just dependent on money. Money is just a small part of the entire game. That's the whole economic model or the development model we are working on.
What are the challenges that you face today? And in the context of us thinking about the future, what kinds of things can we consider in addressing the roadblocks or any challenges that you face today in your industry and in your work?
So I think there are two things. One is that there is a barren land, and then you develop a building on that. And the second thing is that you have to break age-old traditions and way of working, which are in practice for centuries or decades, and then build up another building. So I think we are in the second mode, where you have to basically demolish the entire concept of charity, looking at people, poor people as poor because you only think that it is a financial poverty, and the thought process around your second-hand goods or environment and all, and then build up a new thing. So for us, people say logistics is a challenge because we deal with 3,000 tons of material, or the world, the inequality is a challenge. All that is absolutely given. Those are challenges. But the bigger challenge is that how do we demolish the entire traditional mindset of people, which still exists for sure, and which is also nurtured by millions of people or thousands of people who have it. So it's a constant fight. It's not just, and I know that this fight will never be over. More you grow, more you will fight. So it's just a part of life.
It's really interesting to hear because I think, especially at tech conferences, when we think about disruption, we keep thinking about disruption in technology, and we don't really think about disrupting cultural norms and social political systems. And I think that's a very, very interesting point to raise. And again, as a futurist, still, it's very fascinating to hear about, at least someone speak about it in that context. Another question I have for you is, what was, a session during, during this conference that may be outside of your sphere but impacted you the most? And if you could tell me, a little bit why, this particular session had this significant impact.
So, largely we are working a lot on education, health, energy, all kind of things, little bit. Because when you are working with the larger communities, almost 22 states of India, you touch upon various aspects. But like for that matter, yesterday's session on the bamboo school was good. But then again, I have a very important question on that we are talking about 180 kids, 50 acres of land, and then turning around that. So how many of us really have that liberty or those resources to operate like that? It's a beautiful model, but if you put your entrepreneur mind or social activism mind, you want to have those models for the much larger population of the world, So that's one point. Energy thing was certainly good because I think it is. If you see this session on the energy part, it is not actually on energy. It is largely on how you look at people whom you call poor. So I think for me that matters a lot. That's the same language which I or Goonj also speak. So that was beautiful.
So I read that you're a Schwab's social entrepreneur. So I'm a global shaper, and I'm here representing the global shapers primarily. And as you know, we're an initiative of the World Economic Forum to give youth a seat at the table. So my question to you, as a fellow stakeholder at the forum, is if you could say and leave us a message in one concise statement, like what is the future that you imagine?
Listen, I think the future we can only imagine if we correct our thought process and looking at issues. I think until unless we drop the arrogance of thinking that we know everything and the other person does not know much, or we will find the problem and we will solve the problem, or the arrogance of basically just defining someone as poor, illiterate, uneducated, whatever, of every person who is not wearing good clothes. If we do not leave that arrogance, if we do not leave that way of thinking, I don't think we can imagine a bright future, because we are, even when we are imagining a bright future or a good future, we are still using our distorted lens. So my whole thing about this, whatever I'm trying to do all across and I'm trying to raise this voice, that why can't we for some time throw away our own distorted lenses and look through the lenses of the people for whom we are trying to work and with whom we want to see that brighter future. I'm already privileged. What else do I need in my life? So those and the arrogance of accepting that yes, I have distorted lenses. Arrogance of not accepting that I have distorted lenses, rather. I think that's the most important part, and then I can think about future. Because if we just correct a bit of today with me, I'm not talking about the society. I'm pretty sure that I'll be a better person to look for a better future or imagine or do for a better future. But if I'm not correcting myself, and then thinking of a better future, I will again use the same distorted lenses and try to find a solution, which is not done. Simple.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you for leaving the message that in the wake of digital disruption, we need to consider also disrupting cultural norms and disrupting ourselves in order to best enable and empower cities.
You're a human being.
Yes.
And whatever you're trying to do, right, you're trying to do for yourself. Even when you say disruption in technology, why are you disrupting them? Because you want a better life for everyone. So it's extremely important to look into the fabrics of humans first, and or the animals first, or the living beings first, and then think of the non-living entities.
Well, thank you very much for your time this morning. It was a
Okay, good afternoon, Prince Fattaah. It's an honor for me to interview you today. Okay, yeah. I'm curious, what is your take about our theme, the future reimagined?
I'm enjoying it actually. There's a lot. I see that there's a lot of focus on artificial intelligence, but I think we're using the word artificial intelligence wrong. The fact that we always think that artificial intelligence will take away jobs, it's not actually artificial intelligence that will be the one taking it away. It's the automation actually, which has been an issue since the 1960s when we started working and we started having factories. So that's a totally different. I think the worry that we have is completely different from what we should focus on. Yes.
Yeah, so there have been a lot of discussions about technology, how fast the world is changing, and things that we could do. But you also said that we're focusing on the wrong things as well. There's a lot of us who are doing that. What do you think are skills? Okay, this question has two parts. What do you think are skills? Could be long forgotten, could be current, could be future skills that people can hone to better prepare for the vastness of the future?
So the skills area, the values, ethics, preparing people for the workplace in more of a practical way. I think that actually works. That's actually a part that we have been missing actually with the technology that comes in. Everyone can communicate faster. Networking is easier. We still can't actually forget that we have to have the human connection. So we still need to talk face to face actually, which is better than. I mean, this interview wouldn't work as well if we're texting, isn't it, or something? I mean, yes, I mean it doesn't have the same flavor to it.
Also, got a question with roles. Like a lot of people have been debating about, and have been like talking a lot about the role of government, the role of the business sector, the role of new enterprises, the role of the youth. So there's a lot of questions about who is really responsible for the future. And there's also another conversation about us being individually responsible for it. What is your take on this?
I think it's a mixture between both. I think that it's important that individuals know the direction that they're going for and what future they want to set for themselves. But I think that all these parties actually play a part when it comes to building up the future. The youth, being in the finance sector, we have a lot of systems that are legacy systems that have been there since the 40s, since the 50s. We don't actually innovate as quickly as we should. So with the rise of like financial technologies, fintech, AI, for example, is being used in the back-end systems because you still need the human factor when it comes to talking to your clients, and that is, I think, an example of what we need to do. We need to utilize technology better. The government plays a part because they regulate the banks, and we don't want something to happen like the 2008 global crisis to happen again. So, I mean, everyone has a part to play, but then they have to understand their role.
Thank you very much, Prince Fattaah. I really had a wonderful time in this interview.
So day to day I'm involved in this organization called We the Teachers, which the primary activity is teachers training in Indonesia. So we work in a couple of different cities, but the idea is to sort of make the pedagogy, the learning experience more relevant and more meaningful, because there's a huge gap between what is happening in classroom and what students face when they leave the system and join the economy, and we're trying to sort of bridge that gap through the teachers' interaction with students. I thought there is a nice balance in this forum between those who are super optimistic and seeing AI or technology taking over a lot of the things that human beings are doing, but then there are a lot of people who are strongly still holding on to the foundations of humanity and human interaction, which I think is the underlining of the education system, of the classroom experience, because I do think that technology can help with what is happening in the classrooms. I mean, looking back, say 100 years ago, the technology is a textbook, and that helps teachers in conveying concepts, say the water cycle, to students. So technology will play that role, but I feel that the human-to-human sort of interaction, empathy, and collaboration between a teacher and a student will continue to be there. I think it's quite a waste of time. We're afraid, and it's interesting with the survey, right? Because we saw like how many things that AI, say, taking an example of AI again, like how dangerous it is, versus how there are a lot of opportunities. And I choose to see the glass half full, where there can be a lot more improbable jobs in the future for the betterment of the world and the economy, and it's only going to get exciting. But then again, us in classrooms, I mentioned that we're the backstage people, right? Like our responsibility is to prepare the students to be ready for such quick changes. Again, I'd like to refer to the poll this morning. It was interesting to see the motivation of people coming here, and I thought that all the reasonings were quite abstract, as in like the first one was idea, and then the second one was to make the world better or something along that line. And I think the call to action will be to translate those thoughts and the spirit especially that we take away from this event to real actions, to the mundanity of office, to the tiredness of bureaucracy, working with people that can be hiring, for instance, but yeah, and to persist in that.
Yes. Thank you.